Back in 1963, when President Kennedy was shot, I was only 9 years old. Coming to a place like this, it's just unbelievable. The painstaking effort that they took in this museum to put together displays that can take you in time into history. And believe you me, this is a very interesting room. It's designed like the room in the White House. This is the actual flag that was draped on President Kennedy's casket when he laid in state in the White House. This is amazing what they have done with this museum. You know, it sometimes takes you on a journey where you start to think, what would life have been like if President Kennedy wasn't shot and was able to get another 4 years out of his presidency? He was on a pretty good roll, got the economy going. There was a lot of interesting things that President Kennedy did, not only for the country, but he finally, him and his wife, brought Camelot to the White House. People were real happy, not only in America, but all over the world. It was a very interesting time. Jackie Kennedy was just great. They brought kids into the White House. They had children, little John and Caroline Kennedy. Boy, I tell you, it broke everybody's heart when John Fitzgerald Kennedy got shot in November, back in 1963. This is a display of President Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy, Mrs. Kennedy, riding along in Lincoln in Dallas back on November 22nd. This whole museum is just put together so well. It's really a beautiful place to come and relive a huge part of history. There was a museum that sold out in Dallas, Texas, that had all the memorabilia from November 22nd. This museum bought out that museum, and they have a window from the book depository where Oswald supposedly shot the president. There's a few pictures of Oswald being shot by Jack Ruby. This is the ambulance that took Oswald to the hospital. They actually have the theater chair where Oswald was arrested, the day he was arrested, where he was sitting in the theater. The policeman's uniform that he was wearing the day that he was shot by Oswald. There's just so many things here that's unbelievable. Every time you turn the corner, the displays are put together so well, and it just really gives you the full impact of history. There is so much here you cannot even believe. There are so many little trinkets that are put together from the era, from the presidency of John Fitzgerald Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy. It's just phenomenal. It's one of the, after President Kennedy was killed, they made actually Kennedy half dollars, and they really went over really, really big. You know, it changed our country. I don't want to say it was stuffy, but before Kennedy and Camelot and Jacqueline Kennedy, our country was like, it was old. It was kind of, and they brought a new life. And there is so much here to see. You know, when Kennedy came to this Illinois, where he came to Rockford, no matter what he did, people went out to see him. He was so charismatic. It was unbelievable. It's something the country needed at that time. And I'll tell you what, it's something the country needs even now. We need a president that has charisma. 1956 Cadillac Secret Service parade car. This used to follow presidents around. It followed President Kennedy on November 22nd. This vehicle was specially built for the Secret Service for use with the presidents of the United States. In fact, it started out being used by President Eisenhower, then President Kennedy, and also President Johnson. These things come equipped with running boards on the sides and a running board on each side in the back. They also have red light and siren on this vehicle. You know, it was a real interesting time back in that day when presidents could ride around in convertibles and the Secret Service could ride around in something beautiful like this. It was very, very elegant, very interesting, nice looking. November 22nd went down in history, and it changed the way we paraded dignitaries around. If you'd like to advertise on the Chicago History and Automotive Heaven television and radio show, you can contact me at 312-841-2560. Email me at rautomd@gmail.com. Go to our website and check out all of our stuff. We have a sponsors page on there at richiez.com. That's www.richieze.com. If you have a business, product, or a service, we can put together a package that'll help benefit your business, product, or service. Or if you just like to donate, it's a pledge drive. You can donate to our show and keep us on the air. We're actually looking for sponsors to do a lot more shows like you've seen today. I'm Richie Z. Thank you for watching. Here are some of the famous gowns and dresses that Jacqueline Kennedy wore. The clothing of Camelot. Ole Cassini was one of the designers that outfitted Jackie Kennedy with over 300 outfits. No matter where she went, from Europe to the United States, when she walked in, she lit up a room. What a great time in America for Camelot. Every time you turn the corner in this place, it's just unbelievable. It's not just a historic auto attractions, a journey in time, but it's also a journey in presidents of the United States and of history, period. We have here President Lincoln, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and Dwight Eisenhower. I think one of the greatest presidents we've ever had was Abraham Lincoln. He came from Illinois, and he actually was president during the war that we had with the North and the South, and he's the one that actually helped to stop that, and we freed the slaves and all of that. Lincoln was a very interesting president at the time. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was one of the best presidents we ever had. In fact, they called him FDR. FDR came in right after the Depression. The country was in real bad shape, really, really bad shape. And he was the one that brought us out of the Depression. He was a great president. He made the United States really what it was. After Roosevelt died, Truman took over. He was around for a little while, but I'll tell you who was another very interesting president, and I don't know if you know much about him or not, but it was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower became president because he was one of the orchestrators who stopped the war that we were involved in Korea. When he became president, the country, after a war, our country usually goes into a recession because we're not spending a lot of money on the war. And he actually rode on the Autobahns in Europe. And Eisenhower came up with the idea of building freeways, they called them back then, expressways, in the United States. And he is the one that really started that project, which employed a lot of people. You know, it's something, it's real interesting. Here in Illinois, we have the Eisenhower Expressway, named after him because of what he did. But we need political leaders today that'll do the same thing political leaders did back then. November 22nd, 1963, changed a part of our country, and we went from being able to ride around in convertibles to having a hardtop for the President of the United States. We couldn't allow him to be in a convertible anymore. 1950 Lincoln limousine. In fact, this was the original car that Harry Truman rode around in, President Harry Truman. And the interesting part about these older cars, and even the presidential limos that you'll see today, is the roof line is 7 inches higher. That started back in the olden days because all presidents wore top hats and they didn't want to take their hats off and on. So they raised the roof line on these vehicles 7 inches. In fact, this is a real interesting historic car. It had air conditioning, which before that you didn't see much of in the 50s. And this car was actually sent to a coach builder here in Illinois that actually did the work to raise the roof. Nixon came on the scene. He inherited Vietnam, a very troubled time in our era. He was a very interesting president. This is the limousine that was used for President Nixon. In fact, back then, every president got his own limousine, but this is the official car for President Nixon. And we all know he stopped the impeachment by stepping down. An interesting fact back then was that Vice President Agnew had to step down because of some controversy that he was involved in. Gerald Ford was the only president in the history of the United States that was not elected. And they made him vice president. Then Richard Nixon stepped down and we got President Ford. It was a very interesting time in America, and this is the automobile that drove around President Nixon. Ronald Reagan came on the scene, and this is his limousine. As you can see in today's show, limousines have really taken on a lot of change. In fact, you cannot even get a presidential limousine today. Once they're done using it, it has to be destroyed because they don't want anybody to find out how these things are built so they could actually bomb the car or kill our presidents. This is the most sophisticated vehicle made, but this is not the car that President Reagan got. This is actually a prototype that was built for the President of the United States, and what they did was they gave him a list of pros and cons. What do you think of the vehicle? When the President gave them back the list and told them what he liked and what he disliked, they built a presidential vehicle for President Reagan. And from this time on, none of the presidential vehicles will ever be displayed or used later on. This is the prototype for President Reagan. It's the last time you'll see something like this in a museum. The 18th President of the United States was Ulysses S. Grant. He served as president from 1869 to 1877. This 1865 Studebaker 5-window carriage, Landau carriage, was the vehicle with the horses that drove the great President of the United States around. We have all kinds of outfits and everything from the era that the President actually wore. This place, I tell you what, it's just so much beautiful history. Diana, Princess of Wales, died in August 31st at 4 a.m. in Paris in a car crash. She was at the age of 36. This is one of the vehicles that drove her around when she was the Princess of Wales. It's a 1948 Daimler. 1950 Rolls-Royce Silver Evita Perron presidential limousine. Bulletproof glass, 1 inch thick on the rear compartment. Armor plated, the rear doors and rear body of the vehicle. Rear seats is lowered 4 inches. Bulletproof tires, private locks, and on rear doors. Nikita Khrushchev, premier of the Soviet Union, served from 1953 through 1964. This is his parade car, 1962. Emperor Hirohito served as Emperor of Japan from 1926 to 1989. This 1935 Packard 1202 Super 8 limousine is what drove him around. What a gorgeous automobile. I love the distinction that the Packard automobile had. You knew quality and workmanship when you saw a Packard going down the street. During World War II, the Germans rode around in some gorgeous automobile. This is one of the automobiles the Germans used in World War II. This is actually a German staff car. Some of the leaders in World War II were very interesting people. This automobile here was used by Benito Mussolini in Italy. I think it's one of the most prettiest looking cars that was used by any leader back in World War II. Leader of the German Nazi Party was Adolf Hitler from 1933 to 1945. This 1939 Mercedes G4 six-wheel staff car is the original car that Hitler used when he was out. Unbelievable workmanship. This is probably one of the most interesting vehicles I've seen in a long time. This has to be worth a lot of money. James Dean is probably one of the greatest parts of history, or the greatest part of the 50s in history. He had an attitude that was unbelievable. But the most interesting part of James Dean was when he acted, he was only in 3 movies. When he acted, they claimed in the studios that he gave 300% in any of the movies that he made. In fact, he was famous when he crashed his Porsche and died in 1959. But I'm going to tell you a little tidbit of information. Without James Dean and the attitude he had, you wouldn't have had a Marlon Brando, a Johnny Cash, an Elvis Presley. They all mimicked James Dean, the attitude especially. And Marlon Brando was the one that did it the most. He had a real bad, tough guy type of attitude, and that's what made him a star. Following James Dean. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most interesting actresses back in the 50s. In fact, not many people know, but I've read a lot of stories and that about Marilyn Monroe. And Marilyn Monroe was a brilliant lady. She could play that dumb blonde, as they categorized her, very well. She was also able to take a script to a movie, read it one time, and memorize it. The only poor thing about Marilyn Monroe was that she never found true love. Boy, she tried very hard. A great sex symbol of the 50s, Marilyn Monroe. This is a gorgeous 1972 Lincoln Mark. Elvis loved this car. This body style was just unbelievable. Elvis actually took and bought this one and kept it, and it was actually titled to Elvis Presley. You know, an interesting point of Elvis's life was he gave away hundreds of cars to friends and people he didn't even know. People in the police department and in politics back in Memphis. Elvis was a very interesting guy, very talented, but a very caring person. He loved to make people happy. When he died, he really wasn't worth a lot of money. But Priscilla Presley took the mansion and turned it into the gorgeous, gorgeous museum and tribute to Elvis Presley, and they're making a lot of money right now. Colonel Harlan Sanders became famous at the age of 65. He had a special recipe for fried chicken. This is his limousine. It's a 1939 Lincoln KV-12 limousine. Lincoln was an interesting automobile back in that era. It went into bankruptcy, and the Ford Motor Company took it over back in the, I believe it was the early 30s. Very, very interesting car, and it became the Ford Motor Company's luxury line of automobiles. Another interesting story is, though, about Colonel Sanders. All his life, he just worked as a common person. He was a tire salesman, a restaurateur. He operated a few hotels, aspiring lawyer. He was a very interesting person. He sold insurance at a certain point. This is a gorgeous 1960 Cadillac limousine. It was owned by Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was a very, very interesting person in history. I don't think we'd have the sophistication that we have today if it wasn't for Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes became president, took over a tool company that his father and grandfather started. In fact, it was worth a lot of money at the time. The reason being, they had a drill bit, the first in history, that was able to drill through hard rock and stuff. People were digging for gold and things like that, but also the wildcatters for going after oil. That company, the Hughes Corporation, Hughes Tool Company, actually designed a bit for that. But Howard Hughes took that company and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar organization in a few years. Howard Hughes was the pioneer of aerospace technology. He really, really had a vision and did a lot for the aerospace industry. In fact, some of the things that Howard Hughes designed back in the 20s and 30s for airplanes is still being used to this day. Also, becoming a pioneer in motion pictures. Howard Hughes was a movie mogul. He was able to use sex and violence in his movies to sell. Well, those two things always sell, always did sell, and always will sell. But Howard Hughes took it to a new level and made it work. This is a great car, and it's a tribute to a great individual, Howard Hughes. The corporation is still doing well. It's still a multi-billion-dollar organization worldwide. If you'd like to advertise on the Chicago History and Automotive Heaven television and radio show, you can contact me at 312-841-2560. Email me at rautomd@gmail.com. Go to our website and check out all of our stuff. We have a sponsors page on there at richiez.com. That's www.richieze.com. If you have a business, product, or a service, we can put together a package that'll help benefit your business, product, or service. Or if you just like to donate, it's a pledge drive. You can donate to our show and keep us on the air. We're actually looking for sponsors to do a lot more shows like you've seen today. I'm Richie Z. Thank you for watching. This year, we're going to be redoing our studio. In fact, I'd like to thank the folks at Race Tech. It's a snap lock floor. They have supplied us with the whole floor for our studio. So we're going to be installing this. I love the floor, the concept. We're doing a gray and blue checkerboard pattern. and then we're going to have black for the edges. So we're going to actually do that segment on the floor on how to dress up your place where you keep your toys. We also got this motorcycle thing here from Radical Garage out in Ontario, Canada. In fact, I met these people at the SEMA convention in Las Vegas, Nevada. They got the coolest toolboxes. We featured them on one of our shows, but he came up with this Patriot motorcycle thing. He knows I'm a biker, and he donated that to the shop. It's Curtis over at Radical Garage in Ontario, Canada. We're also going to be doing a lot of things in the studio. It's not just a show about cars. We're going to be doing motorcycles. We're going to be doing a lot of those motorcycle shows. In fact, I have crash bars for my motorcycle. The only reason I'm putting crash bars on is I've been riding for 20 years, and I've always had highway pegs. And you know what? Every time I get out on the road and I'm just cruising around and I pull away from the light, the right foot wants to get up on that highway peg. So we're going to be installing that. We've got LED lights we're going to be putting on the bike. We got a remote control starter for the motorcycle and a lot of other really cool things. A cup holder, new sound system. So we're going to be working on that. Mid-America supplied us with the interior for the Corvette. In fact, we're doing a little bit of a two-tone, giving it that modern look. My Corvette's an 89, where you replaced all of the seats, all of the carpeting, the dash covers, the steering wheel. This is my old dash cover, console cover. This new style is going to be with the carbon fiber look. It's very popular now. So that car, we're actually going to be doing a segment also on refinishing it. That's one of our vehicles that I'm going to call the segment Junkyard Dog to Showtime. We also have a company, Rapid Air, out of Wisconsin. They got an air system. While we're doing the floor here, we're going to be installing into the studio. So when we work on cars, we don't have we have air everywhere we need it. All you do is plug it in, cut it to whatever length you need. They have all the elbows and everything you need, so you can have air everywhere you need it when you're working on your vehicle. Take it apart. You don't have to nut and bolt anything anymore, or weld it or solder it or any of that. I don't know who it was that said they saved the best for last, but it's so true. We did save the best for last. Terry's Etching out of Chicago, south side of Chicago, took our logo and made a sign for our anchor desk, the Wild World of Classics. Terry will etch anything into mirror or glass or smoke mirror as we have here, any kind of logo or anything. I just love what he did with my logo for the Wild World of Classics. And I'm Rich Satkowski, and I'd like to thank you for watching.